Unlock the secrets hidden in the dark. Symbols on the wall, writes about the spark. We sharks vision, playing every part. Unlock the secrets, gotta leave your mark. Unlock the secrets hidden in the flame. Steps to enlightenment, never be the same. Oaths in the circle, shadow in the name. Unlock the secrets, it's more than a game. Unlock the secrets.
Unlock the secrets. Yo, what up? It's DOENUT, and you tuning in to Illuminati News. And we are here with a special guest, David, Ages of Muses, Gosselin. Haven't been here for over a year, so it is absolutely necessary to bring David on. And we're going to dive deep into the devil at Woodstock. I was about to say at Hollywood, but at Woodstock. How are you?
Good, man. Wow, it's been a year. Where does the time go? It's great to see you.
It's great to see you too. And in our last episode, we covered the Gosselin Institute, and that was a lot of fun. Make sure to go watch that. Plus, I got all of David's links down below. He's got a book, Twitter, all that. Make sure to go grab all of that stuff. But this is the last video we did on the self-help Luciferian perversion of the West. Absolutely incredible. Got to go watch that. But we're going to get into a topic after the Illuminati news on the devil at Woodstock. David, what are we talking about when we talk about the devil at Woodstock?
Well, we're really talking about the history of the counterculture and pretty much how culture is created and manipulated in the modern world. And, I think nobody would have a problem with me saying that, yeah, sure, Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, this is largely manufactured culture. It's heavily produced and it's very controlled, right? The music industry, the culture industry, Hollywood, these are highly controlled industries. We think of today, whether it's the control of mainstream media or alternative media, people are like, yeah, sure, most of it is controlled, right? It's rare to find really independent platforms and thinkers, but it's the same with culture. And I think that the more we understand that, and the more we really appreciate the fact that politics really is downstream from culture, that's true. That's something the oligarchy understands, and that shapes things down the road. Creating culture doesn't happen over just from a matter of a few headlines in a few weeks. It takes years. It takes generations, and the oligarchy thinks generationally. So I think if we're really to combat and go up against the behemoth, we have to be able to think in these generational terms. And so the devil at Woodstock is really rewinding to the 1960s, peace and love, Charles Manson, and getting a sense of, what really happened there. How did we get here, right? With the current Luciferian, self-centric culture that we have. There's a whole story there. And even for people who are not, let's say, conspiracy theorists or whatnot, honestly, it's more interesting. This is all way more interesting than the official story and, all the true crime.
The audio is getting a little muffled. I think you just got to be a little closer. But please continue.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
My microphone was turned there. And yes, so I think this is just way more interesting. So we're going to do a deep dive here into the 1960s and get a bit of a handle on how culture works, how it shapes the images in the hearts of minds of people, and how that's relevant for shaping the future of culture.
Yes, and I just showing some of the image, warming y'all up subconsciously, I guess, for what's the come as. This is just some footage of Woodstock, like a religious experience, everybody just tripping out, and then it came to like a crashing halt in some ways with these Manson stuff that went down, that actually went down around this time. So today is August 10th. It's the helical rising of Sirius, which is happening tomorrow. Now, this is a very important day when it comes to America, when it comes to Albert Pike's astrology room. And in the book where I, connect the dots is from this book, The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital. And this is today, the Masons in the building of Washington, D.C. And let's go through a couple pages right in the beginning of the book. I didn't even have to read the whole book. Just the foreword alone is just 2 pages. And right here at the bottom, it says, I'll just read this real quick. This is precisely the cosmic setting that David suggests represents the secret star plan of Washington, D.C. While Pike engineered a schematic time for his star map, Oveson shows that it relates to a number of days centering upon August 10th of each year. So August 10th today is dedicated for the helical rising of Sirius, which is tomorrow, Hulk Hogan's birthday, who just passed away. So I'm seeing all this Sirius symbolism out there in the world. Jeffrey is back in the news. He was hung today as well. It's his anniversary of his witness protection, moving into witness protection on August 10th by a rope. And also, so was Robin Williams on August 10th and the day centering upon it. So huge day for ritual. Even in the news, they're talking about we're going to rise again, the helical rising again of Albert Pike statue in Washington. So I believe all this with culture, WrestleMania, this is all culture, and it is very, very symbolic. For example, the numerology of 201, we had this event, and it was called 201 simulation right before the whole world changed forever with algorithms, AI in the 19. Well, Trump on 8/8, it was his 201 days winning, or maybe it was 8/9. I don't know. But I thought that was kind of interesting because the date that it was his 201 days of winning, where we had Ozzy Osbourne pass away, the whole 201 thing, this went pretty viral. But there was just something that happened in Emory University. I'm not going to say actually where it's at to block the algos, but their address is address 201. That's where their address is on their street. So you also got the 333 in there and the 322. So there's so much going on in the Illuminati news today. But when it comes to culture, and please interrupt me, David, anytime. I'm just running through the Illuminati news to catch everybody up.
I need to get my Illuminati news too, so I'm keep going.
Okay, so smash that like button for all your Illuminati news. I'm going to sprinkle it in with stuff that when you bring up Woodstock, which also happened around this time, the helical rising of Sirius in August. And then you had the guy that killed the radio star, right? This assassination of John Lennon, who was very productive in the counterculture revolution. He had his Revolution 9 and his last album, the 9th Beatles album, the White Album, was to kick off, according to Manson, the war between the races. So there's just so much weird stuff. As the number 9 followed John Lennon, just like 69 followed Jimi Hendrix. But I thought it was just interesting how the main radio star, John Lennon, he was killed. And then a year after it, the first music video to premiere on MTV, one of them was Video Killed the Radio Star. And everything changed from radio to video programming, which changed to reality TV. So we don't get cool music videos anymore, which also was stemming from Kenneth Anger, Hollywood, Babylon, and the occult. But this is just so weird how the song Mask Off came out the same date, not the same year, but the same date that we were able to take our mask off. Like, that's freaking weird. And then we get all these celebrities telling us to microdose and how it's going to change your life with all these psychedelics, which is just the same gameplay as changing the belief system into the sexual revolution, which I think is just going a hard opposite direction in a lot of ways, where we're having a population collapse via people not having kids, but also a rise of, I think it was 79% of Gen Z is celibate. So there's also a lot of studies on the mass psychology of fascism where these urges of human desires get weaponized. As I just saw the movie Weapons yesterday. That movie was sick. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
No. What? Tell me. I have a few thoughts, but yeah, what's the movie? Weapons?
Okay. So this new movie just came out. So much garbage films out there, but this movie was just wonderful in its storytelling, and I thought it was a good movie. I saw it last night, and this I'll end it right here. I want to get your thoughts. But this is Sunset Boulevard. I believe this is sort of like a Stanley Kubrick Eyes Wide Shut expose on what was going on in Hollywood. It's the Hollywood Story, released today on August 10th. That's when this movie came out, Sunset Boulevard. It starts off with a guy like in a pool, passed away. There's so many celebrities who drown, so I feel like there's something there. But the connection to the Chateau Marmont, which is this hotel I've been diving deep into in Hollywood, but just at this movie, Sunset Boulevard, and all these different films with the Sampaku eyes, I believe this is just making people go crazy, because every movie has this, every mainstream podcast, everything is pushing, because it's symbolic, it's symbolism. Showing something of the deadening first of the emotions of oneself and the rise of narcissism, and also just symbolically like the crazy eyes. But this movie Sunset Boulevard came out today as well. But please, what are your thoughts?
Okay, well, now I got some good movie picks. I never know what to watch. I usually just watch comedy podcasts if I'm not watching like news or geopolitics updates and stuff.
Well, shout out to Canada. South Park is hilarious.
Right. Yeah, I'm shocked they're still killing it, huh? It's crazy.
Very funny.
But yeah, I mean, like the subtitle of my book, A Renaissance or New Middle Ages, it talks about transformation, right? It's called Magic, subtitles Magic, Mystery, and the Transformation of the West. And I talk a lot about the role of film, right? Cinema as the modern image making industry. So anything from, you seem to, any stars that step out of line, right? The murder of actors and stars that maybe aren't going along with the official line. That makes perfect sense if we understand the role of culture and image making. And the idea of films, modern films, as a modern form of transformation, right? So it's not transformation spelled normally, but TRANCE formation. Films put us in a trance, right? They're visualizations, and a lot of hypnosis, right? It usually starts with close your eyes and then imagine, right? So you close your eyes and you imagine, and we take you to a different world. In fact, I've seen some movies, they actually start with that. You got like some nice like piano, hypnotic music, imagine, right? Cut scene. And so that's an induction, right? That's the beginning of the induction. And you can do a lot with that, You get people to play out different scenarios, all this dystopian stuff, all this end time stuff, natural catastrophes, aliens, right? These are the recent inductions. Uh, but you can go back to any moment in time, right, in modern history, and you can see there are certain trance inductions that are being introduced. And this,
It's, the audio goes a little weird when you step back, but when you're
oh,
close, it
sorry,
sounds
here,
awesome. No, it
yeah,
sounds
okay.
good now. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm staying close. So yeah, and we can go back to ancient Greece, right? And you had the same thing with the ancient Greek theater, right? This is where people had their transformations. This is where they were exposed to lofty ideas as well. So I think the key point that I would want to make is that you have a trans war, if you will. A lot of behaviors are shaped through rituals, whether they're movie rituals or whether they're religious rituals, spiritual rituals, or whether it's recycling. You think you're saving the world or something, and then you find out it's all going in the same dump. But you have these rituals. And the problem is that you used to have higher forms of trance, right? Like if you go to the classical Greek theater, people were able to emote with higher and loftier ideas. Prometheus stealing fire from the gods and giving it to mankind, right? He was giving mankind the power of reason to create and to use its insight, right, to actually have a mastery of Earth, right, to not just be hostage to the elements or to Mother Earth, who was actually quite ruthless, right? We think of Mother Earth as this nice thing, and people have been trance-induced, right, into just emoting with like green grass, clean air, and oh, wouldn't that be so nice? But nature has historically been one of the most ruthless forces against man. So all that to say, people emote through this art, through the music, right, and the culture. And when that is only confined to the lower spheres, you have a problem, because people, we tend to know what we think about something by how we feel about it, right? And so if people, that's where we get our cues from. And so there are all these ideas today, the kind of things we're talking about, human control, societal control, population control, whatever. They don't really know how to think about these things because there isn't really a cultural matrix at the industrial level that educates people on these things. Back in ancient Greece, it was the classical stage. And so that's really key. The reason people are often stuck in these lower spheres and this self-centered world that we're in is because that's largely what's been pumped through the cybernetic feedback system, which is what the modern film industry is really about, right? They're feedback loops. We're just getting all these inductions and we're just playing out all these things, but there's a lot of stuff we're not playing out, right? What about something completely different than the technocratic feudalism and algorithm ghettos that we're constantly being primed with? People don't know how to emote with that, right? They don't have a relationship with these ideas, and that's the problem, right? That's the kind of things I like to deal with in our publications.
I also showed you brought up the trance, right? And it makes me think of alchemy and the transmutation process of alchemy. And we kind of see that from man turning into hippies, rolling in the mud. Here's one of the most recent Burning Mans of a man actually in the mud on all fours like an animal. So there's sort of like a transformation that happens in the cult, right? The culture. And with the phones and the fatigue, I mean, people keep talking about fatigue this, fatigue that, not knowing most of that's just coming from attention switching of the cell phone, which is turning people into where they can't control themselves, impulse control, because of the cell phone. Even the emails, when they first came out, an article came out saying that it dropped IQ points, like 10 points or something like that, just because of checking emails. So with just the phones that we have today, is pretty crazy. There's a lot of news of AI right now, like all over the media. And what I think is going on with the AI news, because it's a double-edged sword, just like anything really is a double-edged sword. I'm not against AI, but it's also a double-edged sword, and who's programming it and what kind of information are we getting. And I believe what we're seeing is a battle for dominance of the AI, just like we're seeing in crypto markets or corporations and monopolies. That's why you got all these like hit pieces on different AIs. But just so much AI stuff in the news, and it doesn't surprise me that in numerology, right, A is 1, I is 9, it's 19. It was released right after the 19. But this goes into the culture and weaponizing human desires. When it comes to the media, we see Sydney Sweeney's wonderful genes. I mean, incredible genes. But that's like at all the, I went and saw Weapons yesterday. Sydney Sweeney were all over the place, her posters everywhere. And it's the culture, it's culture. When it comes to marketing, they dive deep. I read this book called Consuming Images of Man or something, and it just went into the photograph and of the modeling and why girls are always looking up. They look up because it resembles fellatio. But then you got this, push for open love, just love all you want, that revolution. But now we have this celibate, no sex revolution going on. And William Reich's book, who has been, people have, connected him to the sexual revolution or whatever. This guy's book on the mass psychology of fascism, weaponizing the libido for control. So it's sort of like but he goes into like healthy relationships, healthy libido or whatever. So that's just like the sexual revolution is just like totally not like a healthy one, how they were like projecting it. It was an experiment, it seems. But now we have like the total opposite of it that's been pushed, where we want order beyond order, with Jordan Peterson, who comes out of the Harvard Psych Department, just like Timothy Leary, who was leading the other counter-revolution. So it seems like the desires are being weaponized when I'm looking into that. Here's an article that just came out on the Illuminati News. Alarming new study finds smartphones ruining our... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, based on what you're saying, I think we're at a pole shift, I'd say, where part of why it's important to understand the hippie counterculture revolution, which was kind of a response. That was the age of Aquarius, right? The idea was it's the age of Aquarius. There's a lot of hair and all these things were kind of symbolic of that. And that was sort of transcending the earlier age of Pisces, right? Which was very much about militarism, order, the intellect. And the Aquarian age was much more, it was Dionysian, right? So it was really about feeling, sensuality, intuition, emotion. And now you're seeing the pole shift again, right? Where the pendulum always swings, not because it has to swing, but because if people are not rooted in a deeper sense of discernment, right, and being able to know what's what, people become naturally radical because you always have to swallow things whole. So now they're like, oh, okay, the sexual revolution, look at all the bad things, right? The self. And yeah, it's now people, I was listening to Tim Dillon earlier, and he's covering stories about how there are these real, like very real life looking fake babies that are like collector's items. They're like $800 and it looks just like a baby. And you have this girl talking about like her whole collection, and people push these things around in strollers. And it's gross, right? It's like, you see what happened when things became about the self. People no longer lost the ability to have deeper, meaningful relationships, which are always give and take, right? It can't just be about yourself and always your narcissistic interests and whatnot, right? There has to be a deeper sense of understanding and love and self-criticism, self-awareness. So people lost that in getting lost in their emotions. Like, emotions go all over the place all of the time. You know, if you have an argument, does that mean you divorce your wife and like break up your family because you're not feeling well, right? So we went to one extreme, and now it's swinging the other way, right? And you can see that with the dark MAGA sort of Trump technocracy thing rearing its head, and it's very much targeting traditionalists of all stripes, right? It's saying we need to go back to traditional society. And so there's Gothic MAGA, right? And there's this whole idea that the modern world destroyed people's spirituality, their rootedness in tradition and faith. And so now we need to go back to these things. But obviously, it's the other extreme where they're pushing a kind of radical mysticism and anti-materialism. But why are they doing that, really? Well, we're in a post-industrial age. The economy is collapsing. And so all of a sudden you see all these ideas about how, well, we don't really need material things, right? We can be happy with less. And a lot of this stuff is being packaged at kind of a return to traditional faith and God, right? When, because people are realizing that they cannot get their spiritual fulfillment from material things anymore because they can't afford them. And so if you don't want people to go crazy, you have to give them something new that they can feel like they're actualizing, right? And they're getting that's their spiritual hunger is being filled. And so this is where psychedelics comes in. Surprisingly, Jordan Peterson, a lot of these even Christian gurus and influencers, mystics and UFO related psychedelics is a major part of that, right? So they're creating this new spiritual nexus, but you can't really understand that if we don't understand the pole shifts, right? Like, you can't understand the 365 days or the cycles of the equinox and whatnot. You're not going to understand the individual moments if you don't know what the series of constellations and alignments and orbits are that make that up. And so when you know the orbits, right, and you know the cycles, it's easier to understand, okay, well, where are we in a system? But also, if you want to change it, right, you have to know what the bigger picture is. So yeah, we're at a pole shift, and if we understand that, then there's always potential for change and good things to happen. I'm not a prepper. I'm not a hardcore prepper, I guess I should say. I think there's a lot of potential. Illusions are crashing down, but that means we do need to go to a higher sphere now and talk about, well, what is good, what is true, what is beautiful. That's what people are really hungry for at the end of the day.
Yes, and we could see that with the manipulation with these commercials too. The desire for spirituality, for connection, human connection, and the parades, and everybody's dancing, and then at the end of the commercial, you're sitting down with your lover, and then you're drinking a Coca-Cola, and it says Coca-Cola, and you won't be fulfilled spiritually, sexually, all that, until you purchase the Coca-Cola or the American Eagle jeans or whatever it is like that. Like, so it goes into so much psychology and also the belief systems. And when you're closer to the microphone, it sounds like so good, but just the heads up, because like everything you're saying just sounds amazing. I want it to just be perfect. You know what I mean? The quote that
I'm
you
gonna
have,
hold it.
yeah, hold it. I'll hold it. Yeah. you've got a new movie coming out, and I got to see a little clip of it, and I saw a quote by Aldous Huxley, and I'll read that. If most of us remain ignorant of ourselves, it is because self-knowledge is painful, and we prefer the pleasures of illusions. And this is the guy that wrote The Doors of Perception, where the Doors got their name from. And these doors of perception we can see in even the psychedelic film Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And Sgt. Pepper's is Aleister Crowley. Like when you break it down with like how many letters are in Sgt. Pepper's and Aleister Crowley, and Crowley's just chilling in the on the cover. But yeah. And it's, I mean, this is all tied in. And the Doors of Perception, I was researching it, and it's sort of like the TARDIS from Doctor Who. And there's always like the telephone booth is like in every horror film now. Like they're bringing it back. It's like a teleportation device to other dimensions, like the doors right here, the doorways of perception. But I also think it's because people are really scared. If like you lose your cell phone, like it's like we're transhumans, and it's like a part of us that has gone away. But that was a cool quote by Aldous Huxley. Can I go into maybe a clip, a world premiere on the Donut Factory?
I would say, hey, I'd say, look, let's give your audience a little treat here. It's 15 minutes. This is world premiere. No one else has seen it aside from a few people I've been sharing notes with. So I would say we can run the 15-minute thing, and I think people get a kick out of it, and we can just discuss it. It's going to go into all these themes that we're touching on and bring it together in a fun way.
Okay, so we're gonna go into that at the top of the hour then, so we can get a water break while we play it. How about that? And continue a little bit more of the Illuminati news. So the Sydney Sweeney, I keep talking about her. She's like has taken over America's brain, probably worldwide. Is Sydney Sweeney trending in Canada?
I only heard about her from the Tim Dillon show. This is where I get my pop culture news from. And I don't see commercials, right? I don't watch TV, but I saw that American Eagle was my brand back in the day. So I still like it. So shout out. I'm glad to see they're making a comeback. There's a 5 2 cents. That's
not called
that's where I'm at.
It's not called Canadian Eagle out there. It's
no. Hey, downtown. I used to go to American Eagle all the time. Good times.
Well, so this is a film with Sydney Sweeney, and they're Charles Manson's girlfriends in the cult of Charles Manson in the movie. So I just thought that's kind of interesting.
Oh,
and yeah, Quentin Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and they totally change the narrative. It's a very good film, but the ending makes you think that the Manson murders never went down. But Hollywood is super occult, and we just got Elon the technocrat building in the heart of Hollywood, right down the street from the Masonic Temple, where Jimmy Kimmel hosts a show. He built his diner there, which I believe is going to turn into a hotel. That's my guess, just because of the layouts of the Theosophical University in Hollywood by Arthur Heinemann, who made the first motel. This is where the 6 root race is going to come out of. But we're talking about Woodstock, right? And I was around for Woodstock 99. I didn't go to it, but I thought it was interesting, with the military industrial complex of Laurel Canyon. But Woodstock took place at a military base. Like previous festivals, it was held in upstate New York. The festival site was the former Griffiths Air Force Base in Rome, roughly 100 miles northwest of Woodstock site in Bethel. And so that's weird that the Woodstock 99 was just at a military base, kind of weird. But the most recent one, you probably went into this, but It was in Bethel, which the etymology of Bethel is the house of God. So Woodstock took place at the house of God. And is this where you brought in the Aquarian thing? Because on the poster of Woodstock, it says an Aquarian exposition with the bird.
Yeah, I mean, this is how it was branded, right? It really was about. It's very much about that rise of the Aquarian age. You know, that was Woodstock was the thing that crystallized that, right? It brought together 450,000 young people, right, who ended up, you know, and whether they were directly at the events or just impacted by the changes. I mean, a lot of the people that ended up in the corridors of power, I mean, these were the flower children, whether directly or indirectly, right? They came from that generation and they were shaped by the sounds and music that came out of this kind of event, which really crystallized everything.
This is Miley Cyrus's new hippie
And you know,
movement.
you mentioned the Woodstock 99. Can you
Yes,
hear
I
me?
can hear you. Yes. Yes, can you hear me? Okay, I can hear you now. Okay, now I can hear you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, I think it's a bit choppy, but yeah, I'm staying close to the mic. So yeah, the Woodstock, there was a whole, it seems like a military experiment for 99, right? Because again, from what I understand, they ran out of water, right? They ran out of supplies. Limp Bizkit came on with his song Break Shit or Break Everything or Break Stuff. And people started just going nuts, right? They kind of turned, people went crazy. So, and the fact that it was held on a military base, it really looks like it was an experiment, right? It just more sort of just testing all the behavioral science stuff that they've developed and applying it to a more modern context with modern music groups, but really doing the same thing. But again, you could say there was kind of an induction, right? And they created the situation where it was like a pressure cooker. And then they got their cue, Break Stuff, and people ended up, you know, and then the narrative is like, oh, well, we ran out of water. People were hot. They were frustrated. But it's like, well, no. I mean, if you know something about any of these things, then yeah, I mean, they're always doing experiments, right? I think that's what we forget sometimes. Like, it's not like everything isn't like the critical moment, but they're always running psyops, are always running. It's constant low intensity warfare. That's part of modern psychological warfare. It's not just like one event or one thing, but it's a constant tension that breaks people over time, right? You see people are going crazy in the culture, the economy, politics, and at a certain point, people disassociate, right? You get schizophrenic breaks, and then people start to adopt new ideas. So the question is, are the new ideas that people are going to adopt, where did they come from, right? That's what we want to be aware of, is what are these new ideas that we're being primed for, which are often very different from the current ideas. And so people think they're somehow breaking out of something, right? They're breaking out of an illusion. They're just breaking out of one illusion to trip headfirst into another. And so we just want to remove all illusions, right? And have our North Star as the truth that, you know, you can always go further in that direction. But what we want is to have the right direction. I think that's what's important, right? We're not gurus or prophets here. Like, nobody's got the absolute truth, but we do want to have a sense of direction. And knowing how the magicians create their illusions and cast their spells, that's key, right? Because at least then you know what's bullshit, you know what's false, you know how illusions are created, and you can at least maintain some sanity and some insight into where things are going.
And here's the Beatles' White Album, which I always found interesting, how the Beatles' White Album was for Helter Skelter, for the Manson murders that took place today, bringing pretty much an ending of the hippie movement, just the symbolism of the bird. It's a white bird. Maybe that has something to do with some symbolism deep, just like Project Bluebird, Charles Manson. His album he was on with the Beach Boys was a Bluebird album. It was like called Bluebird, and this was named after a poem, the CIA project. So all these symbols mean something. And this being the 9th album, it's a completion number before John Lennon's assassination. And then you have today, you got the Migos in their album, Only Built for Infinity Links. Song 9, the completion number, is called 2:30. Well, at 2:30, that's when the Migos death happened of Takeoff at 2:30 a.m. So it just seems like these are rituals with the numbers. This also goes into Tupac, who did the Don Killuminati 7-Day Theory. It's called 7-Day Theory. The guy gets assassinated in Vegas in front of a pyramid. He's staying in a pyramid, and then 7 days later he passes away or something like that. So just tons of just strange stuff. And this new movie's coming out, Him, full of symbolism, and they keep playing this song, Hail Mary. Hail Mary, because it's like a football term, but that was like the big thing with this album. This album had Hail Mary song on it, and it was the like Illuminati album. So that's kind of interesting. Jeffrey, he passed away today by a rope, and they're showing us images now in the news of his artwork hanging from a rope. Very strange. I'm sure it's symbolic. As you can see right here, Jeffrey, August 10th. Today's August 10th, the helical rising that we were showing earlier. But the helical rising is tomorrow on a Monday. And we're just getting off of this full moon, and that's like the moon day. Hulk Hogan. I think a big ritual is like about to go down tomorrow. Because this Lionsgate portal, the 8/8, they call it Happiness Day. It's National Happiness Day. But in the ancient times of the flooding of the Nile, the dog days, this was nothing but bad luck. That's what the dog days brought. So it's like this inversion. And here's a secret society of happy people that kind of made it the National Happy Day back in, I think, the 90s. But we're getting flooding right now in the news. There is massive biblical flooding. That's kind of, probably that's just normal, but still. So there's some books we're going to get into. Tell us. Oh, first I want to give a shout out to. I'll give him a shout out in a minute. Tell us about these 4 books. I want to know about these 4 books. Oh, and also we just crashed through 1,000 people. Every time we crash through 1,000 people, I'm gonna remind y'all to smash that like button. Smash that like button. Share the video out. We're here with David B. Gosselin. Make sure to go subscribe to his Twitter down below. Go grab his book. Go subscribe to his Substack. He's going to be premiering his new documentary film. I keep calling it The Devil Went Down to Woodstock because the devil went down to Georgia. But it's The Devil at Woodstock. We're going to get a world premiere intro to it, but please like it. And thank you so much. Devlin became a member for a month, says much love from Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. Much love to you. Thank you for that super chat. Every time we get a super chat, we feed that kitty cat. So, oh my goodness, look, Chan's here for the kitty cat treats. Oh, he saw that donation and wanted to get a little kitty cat treat.
Shout out to Chan.
Shout out to Chan. But please tell us about these books that you brought up, because these are quite infamous books that you sent me.
Yeah, well, the first one here, I mean, I love this book. I read this book like every day. I would wake up, go get my morning coffee, and drink that. And it was really a journey. Tom O'Neill spent, I think, like 30 years researching the Manson story. And he really just totally fell down a rabbit hole, and he refused to turn back. And he just kept going and going and going. And there were so many amazing insights and discoveries he made about things that we're all familiar with, right? MK Ultra and mind control, but the scope of it and the depth, it still remained quite mysterious. And the common narrative was that MK Ultra was this mind control program that lasted for a couple of years. I think it started in like 1950s or early 60s, and it was ended in like early 70s. But pretty much then they were like, and then, we tried some mind control experiments, implanting false memories and stuff, and a lot of it didn't work. So you can just forget about it now. But what we see is that really, if anything, the experiments into psychedelics were just mainline, like they are the culture now. So we pretty much live in an MK Ultra culture. You don't need a secret MK Ultra program if you live in an MK Ultra culture. And the Manson story is central to that, which is what Tom O'Neill looks at. And there's this great quote where he talks about one of the clinicians that was attending to Manson. He was doing research into something that he called the psychedelic syndrome. And what he was looking at, what he discovered, is that people who regularly took psychedelics together as a group would have this psychedelic syndrome where they have a psychedelic interpretation of reality. And it basically, it lasts forever. But if you can hear me, I'll keep going.
Yes, please continue.
Oh, okay, sorry. And so basically the idea was that the Manson family, we sort of remember the end, but we don't really remember how they got there. And they got their start like a lot of the Flower Children, right? They were taking drugs together and they were building these deep bonds. And so among other things, the MK Ultra programs, they had implanting false command, right? Assassins. So it seems like all that was applied to the Manson family. And it's called the family for a reason. It was a family, right? How do you create artificial family systems? What can you introduce to get people to bond and form new links and dissolve old bonds? That's what they were looking at. So Tom O'Neill, the research into the clinicians that were studying the psychedelic syndrome, and that they said a lot of people, psychedelics was associated, it showed that people would turn to psychedelics for reasons of anger or despair. They were trying to escape something, right? They were dealing with some kind of pain or something. That's what usually brought people to psychedelics. And if steered in properly, that rage could be magnified to nine portions. That's what the David Smith was his name, the clinician. So Tom O'Neill gets into all that. So this is when Manson was going to the Haight-Ashbury. So he was being treated at the Free Medical Clinic, right? The San Francisco Free Medical Clinic. And that's where it seems like the Manson family is really a creation, right? It was part of the MK Ultra creating artificial family systems, which has been mainlined into political culture, right? Political cults. And we could argue, when you read this book, the question I had for myself is, are we Mansonian, right? Has the West not become Mansonian? And the way that it's sort of is destroying itself, right? And the way different people are targeted, and well, all the political assassinations as well. The Manson family would go on. They tried to kill Gerald Ford,
Oh,
I
really?
believe, and so he would have, but it didn't work out. So there were all these things, right? So the assassins. I mean, we've continued to see that recently. What happened with the Trump is kind of weird. I don't exactly know what that kid who we know like nothing about still, who was in a BlackRock commercial, how he got on that pitched roof, that sloped roof there, that the Secret Service couldn't go on because it was too dangerous. I don't know, but a lot of this goes back to the experiments with MK Ultra and Charles Manson.
Well, and we just have the NFL guy too coming to the Blackstone, and that was strange, super strange as well. Yeah, because he like assassinated like top level people. Very weird. Or the Mangione character, the
he was
CEO.
in like Hawaii. He was like in Hawaii or something. Like I think at a retreat, or obviously there's all sorts of mixed stories, but yeah, something happened, right? He went somewhere and he got ideas in his head, and he had been looking into, I'm pretty sure he had been looking into psychedelics as a therapy or something. But yeah, it all screamed Ultra. And Tom Neal, he basically, though, in the book just lays out that like the scariest part is what we don't know. Like of everything that we know of MK Ultra, the scary shit is the stuff that we don't fully understand. And
right, like we're only told a little
all
bit.
the ways that Manson got his ideas from like DOENUT.
I think that the computer just froze for a second. So let me know if you can hear me. Okay, I can hear you again. What's up with this book, Robert Heinlein? Yeah. This cover is off the hook. I just like the pink.
Yeah, so this was one of the books that Manson got his ideas from. Robert Heinlein was also a naval officer and science fiction writer, along with Ron L. Hubbard, who also was a naval officer, and they were all writing science fiction in a very tight circle, along with Frank Herbert of the Dune series. Yeah. They were all writing for Astounding Science Fiction, which was overseen by this guy Campbell, who wrote the original novella for the movie The Thing. What we know as what was adapted as a screenplay for The Thing was penned by this editor who was overseeing Astounding Science Fiction. And of course, the thing is, so Heinlein, in his book Stranger in a Strange Land, it's about this Martian messiah who creates his own sex cult, right? It's a free love, open society, and they have their own rituals. They have water sharing rituals. Water is, in short availability over there. And they have things like grokking, which is like a deep intuitive understanding. So it's like you have to become the thing to understand it. So even I have an editor friend that I work with, and actually
Elon calls it grok.
Go ahead.
Elon calls it grok for grokking.
Yeah, no, it's grok is everywhere. I have an editor friend who is a good editor, but he would also say like grokking a poem, like to really feel and understand it at a profound level. So that comes from Heinlein. So Heinlein was a big guy, and he was also living in Laurel Canyon, where the whole hippie culture was created. And that book was very influential as one of these free love and It was all about basically self-actualization, right? That as they were to achieve this higher up mystical powers as well. And so as well. And they were doing grokking and they were doing water sharing rituals. So you start to say, okay, is this all just coincidence? Right? The guy just happens to live in the cradle of the hippie culture in Laurel Canyon, which is, most people think, the origin of it. And David McGowan, the guy who wrote the book that people are seeing now, he just points out that because if Laurel Canyon was part of the official story, it would really change people's thinking about the hippie culture, because Laurel Canyon is just full of all sorts of crazy and demonic stuff and sketchy stuff and weird deaths and murders, and the Manson family hanging out with all the early rock acts, from the Mamas and the Papas to the Beach Boys, and like they were all hanging out. They were all bros. And Charles Manson was, as David McGowan said,
It's breaking up just a
Neil Young thought Charles Manson was what?
Yeah, it's breaking up just a little. Right. It's breaking up a little bit, and I think we have a 2-second delay on my communication to you. So just a heads up. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to hear what you're saying. Just another
one thing. Just if we want to, I don't know if it's coming from my end or your end, because usually I don't have a problem, but I'm curious to try on if I come on my phone.
It's my end.
You want me to sign back in for the audience?
No.
If they want to.
No, it's good. You sound great. It's my end. My internet. Arizona. It's 118 degrees out. Yeah, everything's fried over here. But what? No, you're good. You're good.
My favorite. I'll call it a normie joke. My favorite normie joke. Whenever I work in offices or something, when things are glitching, as they are now, because the heat or whatnot, we're always being told technology is going to allow us to transcend and solve all our problems. I always just say, well, seems like the chips for our brains aren't ready yet, right? Because all this shit is like 5G and whatnot, and it's still all right.
And Mercury
so
retrograde.
Clearly the chips for our brains are not ready. And half the time, center, I make these jokes sometimes with clients.
Yeah, we're in the Mercury retrograde too, so I bet you that's got something to do with the communication and all that. So this is wild. I want to hear again what you were saying about Neil Young, I think, and I was just seeing the water. I never noticed. Maybe this is a bloody water kind of thing going down. That's so wild. I also want to give a shout out. I told him I'd give him a shout out to Scripted Reality. 169. I posted a picture of me wearing a Toxic Avenger shirt today, and he sent me that today is 143 days remaining to the end of the year, and Toxic Avenger is 143. So I was like, that's crazy. That was insane. Oh, so here's just some more stuff. I'll kind of move forward before we get into the world premiere.
People can get ready, right? They're about.
Oh. No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just getting, I guess, for the people that are just coming on, right? So we're about to have a world premiere here of a Devil at Woodstock film that I've been working on. And so, you're kind of setting the play now. We're reaching the top of the hour. So, it'll be interesting to see how people react. Things are about to get a little crazy.
Yes. And I guess I could I'll add one more thing because South Park is just coming out right now. And the whole episode in the Dog Days was about blasting dogs. I think that's not a coincidence, but with the whole Paramount thing being, I think, acquired by the Ellisons, which is connected to Hawaii and Project Stargate and all that. Their ticker on the Dow is Psyche, not spelled like Psyche, but we're talking about the psyche, the mind, the soul, the spirit, and its paramount is Psyche. Just like Sirius XM looks just so much like a lot of the different Sirius. Here's the greater dog star. It looks just like these ancient symbols. So all these symbols are all over the place. Anyway, I'll save this stuff for another day. We're about to premiere The Devil in Woodstock. Make sure to smash that like button and get Renaissance or the New Middle Ages, the book on Amazon. Got those links down below. Go subscribe to David on his Twitter, and go watch our last video on self-help, the Luciferian perversion of the West. It was a banger. I mean, mad views up on there. So we're going to get into that. And also, if you become a member, I'd like to give a shout out. Thank you, Douglas Starr, for the super chat. $2 super chat says The Devil Went Down to Woodstock is very catchy. It is catchy. I've been thinking about this stream for a while. So I'm going to go play this video, and please become a member. It supports this channel. And tell me when you want me to stop it. You know what I mean? So I'll play it, and then you can let me know. We'll still hear our audio. You can mute your mic, but you can be like, yo, stop it. I don't want people to watch the whole movie, you know.
No, just stop it at the just a heads up. So like at the end when it's like the core. Well, we don't want to say it, but yeah, when this little section is done, right? No, we don't need other sections. So like just that. Okay. It's like 15 minutes.
Okay, and I'll have the audio on so you can be like, yo, turn it off. So we're gonna go into that clip. Please smash that like button, and we'll be right back with The Devil at Woodstock world premiere.
I was a mere 16 that summer day. We all piled up in a beat-up car and drove to Woodstock, or someplace we had been told that a great spectacle was to occur, an earth-shaking event where all the stars that lit a generation's sky would be together, like an astronomical alignment. All their energies would merge and give voice to the coming brighter dawn we all felt was awakening in those times. A spirit free of all the bitter strife our parents' lives had known, and free of all the forms of tyranny, the little rows of doll houses in suburbs where the chains of smug conformity and silence grow, and rigid, time-encrusted old beliefs that led the world in mad pursuit of power to war and to the very brink of doom. Again, sat mute as merchants of that trade enslaved the beautiful Promethean fire of reason to their grim and violent ends. Yes, even as we blithely breathed the air of summer's freedom in those sunny fields, across the world, in steamy jungle hells, our brothers bled and died and went insane. And only last summer, our cities burned when the last one of those great prophets fell, and hatred, like a cataclysmic storm, loomed over the horizon of our lives. And though we heard the voice of our own kind proclaim the godlike feat that had been done as they stood on the face of a new world, across the radios and TV screens of our whole world, the weak and crackling sound fell as a lover's words when love is gone, the bygone dreams of days that were no more. For we were a new generation, born not for the narrow realm of ordered thought, the world of soulless men and cold machines, and empty phrases that no one believed. but piously repeated just the same. Of gods who punished or rewarded men as they obeyed like herded sheep or not. No, we were born to be the golden ones, free from all law save what was in our hearts, and free from time, but what each moment gave to pleasure mind and body without guilt, that greatest of the chains of tyranny. And so we came to the appointed place and joined the thousands walking on the roads like pilgrims to some mystic holy shrine. And I became as if one of that throng and lost myself in that great surging crowd, becoming like a leaf borne on the winds that came from where we knew not, but which drove our minds and bodies on with it as on a tide, where thought and feeling melted into one. A moment with no future and no past, where I was free to passively observe without the mirror of falsely judging eyes, as if truly opened for the first time. And I saw many things bizarre and new, the wild profusion of free growing hair, and every possible exotic state of hue and clothing, or of nakedness, and people dancing mid the summer corn to waves of mystical, hypnotic tones, and odors of hashish and cannabis, which sweetly drifted over all that place, like incense from some ancient Doric rite. And just beyond the tumult of this scene, upon a path that led into the woods, I noticed a lone figure sitting there, with such a placid look upon his face, yet so intense, as if by force unseen I was drawn to him. And as I came near, it seemed as if a gentle light played round his head and brightened with his widening smile. And I could not resist a certain charm that seemed to flow forth from his very form. For he was beautiful in that strange way that blends the essence of woman and man. Long flowing locks and penetrating eyes, broad forehead, and that knowing smiling mouth. "What brings you here?" he said as I stood there, not knowing what he meant. And so I said, "Do you mean here with you, or do you mean the here that is this general event, or here upon this earth to walk a time?" "Good answer," he replied with a laugh, and invited me to sit down by his side. As we looked out upon the human sea, the magic of his speech, like music, charmed my soul into believing that we were above all place and time, and free to see the hidden truths that guide the human heart. "I've waited a long time for this," he said, with almost a paternal love and pride. "No single day in all those ancient times, no pious rite of pagan spectacle of Greece or Rome, no conquering warrior host, no angry revolutionary mob, or zealous movement marching in the streets will change the world as will this day," he said, and smiled as he stared far away, it seemed. And I said, "Who can tell what noble dreams are sleeping in the minds that gather here?" "Nobility," he said with a laughing sneer. "No, pleasure is the only God who reigns today, as it will rule the age to come. And he shall raise the self above all else, and make the universe revolve around the sovereign being as if it were a god. And they will drink the power of that wine, as each to each they smiling pass the cup, until they have forgotten that which once had bound their souls together, and the words which echo from the future and the past, and even that great being who exists in whom they had believed in innocence, that great eternal tyrant of the soul, they will deny or jealously reject, as if he were the hated enemy. He fell into a long and silent smile. "You speak of God," I said in reverent tone, more out of fear for where these thoughts might lead. He said, "He has no power on earth, save what the minds of men have deceived to forfeit of their natural true birthright. For they are born of that same flesh and blood as all the creatures of this lovely earth, and share with them the same deep primal urge to live and breathe each moment to the full, and love and recreate in all the joy that mind and spirit lend to pleasure's sway. And merging with that universal dance of life, they find an immortality of joy and pleasure, ever born anew. The great deceiver would have them believe that they must sacrifice for some reward that never was, and robs them of the thing that makes each moment like a paradise." And his words lulled my soul like opium as I gazed out across the teeming fields. A myriad of beautiful young souls were sharing thoughts and feeling as a one, all swaying to the same entrancing tones, as if one powerful wave that could rise up and sweep the world with its all-cleansing force. And he said, "Yes, they will come of age, inheriting the reins of power in the world, but still the freedom of this moment will, like half-remembered dreams, enchant their souls. Then cold necessity will intervene. Few will to their precious ideals stay true, or rather justify their wild pursuit of money and material things as means to that imagined earthly paradise that they believe themselves alone deserve. And some will seek the power to impose the empire of their will upon the world, and many will uphold them in their greed, for they will seem to gain by loyalty and from the flattery of their self-love. But as their power and riches multiply, so does their taste for greater pleasure grow in more insipid, mindless decadence, so that those lords of plunder who exploit the blood and sweat of the vast aching world must feed them ever more to satisfy their lust and ever more rapacious greed. And after their own lands have been sucked dry, they will, by age-old logic, turn to war, that ultimate corrupter of the soul. And all will cheer as victims our contrived and hatred for the enemy inflamed. Their hearts will harden then to the most cruel and bestial methods of the ancient days, for weakness will become the greatest sin. But the most passionate in their vehemence will be the pious ones, who once confessed that noble faith of human love and peace. For love had long since vanished from their hearts. That puling, weak, and poisonous idea which plagued the world for 2 millennia, that all are destined to an equal worth, and with some innate sacredness are born. For it was never so in nature's realm, where strength and beauty are their own reward. And mankind, lacking this necessity, will never rise to all that he can be, terrible and beautiful in his might, conquering all the universe he sees. When he had finished, something in his eyes seemed as if burning with unnatural fire that I had never seen, yet chilled my soul. For I was impotent to answer him, as I stood on the edge of an abyss of doubt and fear. For I could not deny that all he saw existed like the seeds of some dark tragedy, already sown in this bright moment. And my darkest fears, that often haunted me in feverish dreams, a world gone mad, in which I roam alone among the ghost-like beings, unheard, unseen. And as I wept, I thought I heard him say, but only now like a voice from within, "You will not have the strength to stand alone, forever alien to those creatures' love." I walked away and never looked behind. But I heard him laugh in piercing mockery, which echoed in my soul throughout those days and long into the years that passed since then. Each time our common folly would fulfill somehow again that fateful prophecy, I heard that laugh, as I can hear it now, out in the street, in churches, and in homes, and in the very corridors of power.
Wow, 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 wow. Did I stop it at the perfect spot? That was good. Who wrote that poem? That's what people
Yeah, I
are
saw it.
asking.
So that was my poet. Yeah, my poet friend Daniel Leach in Houston, Texas. Shout out. So this is a poem that we published a few years ago, and yeah, we published it in our magazine. And he, yeah, it's a great narrative poem, and I mean, this is an example of a modern classical tragedy, right? He's describing the transformation of the culture and how the Luciferian strain really took hold of the idealists' hearts, right? All these young people that had a lot of high ideals. And the devil's prophesizing that these will actually be the people that do all the evil, right? Because once they realized that their high ideals couldn't be realized, right? They couldn't build that heavenly paradise that they had hoped for. They decided to build an earthly paradise, right? They decided to become materialists and get their spiritual fulfillment from getting material gains and gaining power over the world. And they are what we call the baby boomers as well, right?
Yeah,
Who
the
run
homo
the
economicus.
octogenarians who are still trying to hang on to power. So this was a prophecy, right? And it's a beautiful narrative poem. And yeah, I think it reads right. It's a classical poem, but it reads like something that would have been written today, which it was a few years ago. And yeah, I think you have a lot more history in there. You can understand a lot more about the counterculture in just this brief poem than a lot of commentaries and, you know, different things that are discussed about Woodstock, right? That don't necessarily have that same level of poetic insight. So yeah, I think it was a great poem, and I was like, we got to do something with this. And so this is just one segment, right? There's a whole documentary coming out, but this is the final closing reading poetry chapter of the documentary.
Now, when is the documentary coming out?
So we're only slightly behind schedule, but I'm still editing it. It should be out in the next days. It's going to be out by the anniversary of Woodstock. So Woodstock was on from the 15th to the 18th of August. So we're going to be premiering it on my Substack, Age of Muses. And then we're going to put it out on YouTube for everyone. So people who are paid subscribers will get, so it should be up within like, we're the 10th. So before probably on the 13th, 14th, it should for sure be done by then.
Nice. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, this has been dope podcast. Is there anything you wanted to add on top of all of this with the devil at Woodstock?
I just didn't cat. What was the first thing you said?
Oh, would you like to add anything on to the devil at Woodstock?
I mean, well, overall, the documentary goes into, so it's going to go into Aldous Huxley's Island, right? The fuller doc goes into, well, where did the ideas for the counterculture come from, right? Because again, people think that the hippies were, there was this organic grassroots thing, and they were just rejecting the authority, the establishment, and the establishment wasn't good, right? I think that's where it's useful. We're talking about this pole shift from the Apollonian to the Dionysian, and this is something the oligarchy really loves, right? We talk about a modern dialectic, left, right. Well, another one, the Luciferian sort of duality, is always this Apollonian order and intellect and mind, and then the senses, intuition, feeling, and the fully self-actualized Luciferian is one who can freely navigate between the two, right? He's fully developed intellect, right? Lucifer has a powerful intellect, right? He's very crafty, but he's also fully, he's of the flesh, and he believes in fully embracing the world and the transformative powers of ritual and magic. So it's like, well, how does magic and the intellect and reason go together? Well, that's where you have this idea of the coincidence of opposites. So I believe it's the 33rd degree of the Masons is where you have fully reconciled opposites. So that means light and darkness, good and evil. You do both, right? So the irony is, like, we're getting rid of duality. We have fully transcended beyond good and evil. We are free, fully self-actualized beings. We are like God. And that's because they've overcome this good versus evil thing. And, that's where they say, whoever it is, Dick Cheney or whatnot, like, you got to use the darkness, right? That's Jung talks about this as well. Carl Jung is very much about integrating light and shadow. And so you're supposed to use the darkness. The darkness is power. And if you want to do good, you need to be able to tap into your dark side. That's the Luciferian idea. So yeah, we where do these things really come from, and how do people how is this kind of schizophrenic split induced in people, where it's like they believe in goodness and virtues and whatnot, and yet they have these high ideals that they say they believe in, and yet they're doing all sorts of wickedness. It seems to not make sense if you don't understand that higher Luciferian ideal, but if you do, it makes perfect sense.
So this book, The Island by Aldous Huxley, we see in the show Leave the World Behind, the Huxleys live there, right? You got the Huxley family with the X Club and all that, and Charles Darwin's Bulldog. This book's not really known, The Island. What is this book about? I know we talked about it a year ago, but can you tell us what this book's about and how it's all connected?
Yeah, well, it's it's a very interesting book, because it's always like, Brave New World, we're in a Brave New World. But finally, Aldous Huxley's final vision of predictive programming and complete control is in some ways different from Brave New World, but in other ways the same. The Island is about a utopian civilization that has achieved its highest spiritual actualization. So people they don't have soma, they have moksha. So moksha is a psychedelic drug that allows them to have beatific glimpses, right? To glimpse the eternal. And you basically you take a psychedelic and you have uh you a you could call it you experience an altered state, right? A transformative state. And this is where you get wisdom from. And so the people of the island have rejected modern industrialism and scientific progress. They don't need all these material things because they already have the thing that everybody truly yearns for, which is a deeper spiritual yearning. And so that's
Wow.
Huxley's idea of complete control is you create the ultimate illusion is the illusion that you have shed all illusions, that you are fully self-actualized, that you are this advanced spiritual being. And so that's what a lot of the people on the island, that's what everybody's after, right? They don't really care about Walmart and material goods and iPhones or whatnot. They're about moksha, right? They're about accessing their higher self. And so if you read The Island and then you look at what happened with the counterculture, the Esalen Institute was actually, the founders were inspired by Huxley's Island. They weren't inspired by Brave New World or whatnot. So the chief New Age spiritual institutions that helped create this New Age ecosystem, there's a lot of them. There's not just the Esalen Institute, but that was one of the main and original ones. The island was the inspiration as well. So yeah, it's got a lot of advanced and very profound philosophical concepts. And it just shows that Huxley was really, he was on a spiritual journey, but he wasn't on it because he really just wanted to have a you could say relationship with God or deeper, realize some deeper self and truth. He wanted to know how you create the ultimate system of spiritual control. That's the difference. And that's where I'd say that's evil, right? You go down a spiritual journeys just so that you can better understand how to spiritually control people and what the perfect mechanisms of spiritual control are. So yeah, in the island, it's open communities, open families. If you're born into a family that you don't like, the children can just leave one family and join another family. Mother does not exist as a noun. There are no mothers. Mother is just a verb, right? It's just a behavior that people can exhibit, but there are no mothers. And so, yeah, free love, psychedelics, and they have a light eugenics thing. They look at your wrist, and based on your makeup, your physiology, they can tell what kind of person you are. And so, like, do you need to climb mountains so that you don't become like a new little Hitler or something? Like, what kind of like physical labor do we need to give you? Are you a dullard? So that if we don't want these guys to become criminals, put them to hard labor. That's what they need. Or are you a thinker? Or are you somebody who should be part of the spiritual case? So they got that. So it's kind of like Brave New World, but it's also very different.
It looks a
And there's
lot
also a
like
cool movie, actually. Have you ever seen
what movie? The Beach with the United Nations.
Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah, good movie. So that's what I was thinking. It reminded me of with the beach.
Yeah, because he goes to there's like this utopian island, and obviously it's a movie. So dramatically, it's like crazy shit happens, bad shit happens. But the whole idea of escaping, the normal civilization and joining this new kind of utopian civilization. Yeah, the island is, one of the original templates for that whole theme.
And we all know that Leonardo's neck's not that long. What's going on with with that? He's going to be in a new movie, but he was in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but he'll be in the new film by the guy who did There Will Be Blood. When I see this logo, what is this cover? Because it looks like the Death Star or Sam Altman's ChatGPT orb, which is pretty much Elon's orb. It looks the same as ChatGPT just shared an image that ChatGPT is the Death Star, the destroyer of planets, in a post. It kind of looks like that, or it looks like an eyeball. So, what do you know what this cover resembles? It could be a crescent.
I don't actually know, and because I have one version of the island, and all the covers are different, so I don't even know what the original cover was, if that's it, but I've seen other ones. Like so there's so many, but so yeah, that one it's the first time I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I usually go with what Wikipedia shows because I feel like that's what the mainstream wants us to see symbolically. But yeah, I'll definitely have to read that. I read Brave New World. That was like one of my first books I read in elementary school. So I definitely gotta read this because everybody's getting pushed on the psychedelics in Hollywood. That's like the big push, and the technocrats. Everybody's pushing that stuff because it goes into the belief system. How do you change a culture's belief? Well, that's a way through nudging and resetting the autonomic nervous system. Everybody's so sick of me probably saying that. I say it over and over again for like years and years, but it's just so obvious that is what's going on. Like that's part of the plan.
Yeah, and again, the idea of creating multiple realities. That's what Timothy Leary, in a letter that he in a letter, they were saying that the key is, again, the doors of perception, opening the doors to new realities, breaking away from a monotheistic culture of any kind, right, towards a more polytheistic culture, that instead of the more formalized kinds of religion that traditionally have existed, experiential knowledge. That's the key to all the island's spiritual institutions. It's gnosis, right? You're not going to learn about God through whether it's a philosophical discourse or any kind of formalized prayer. You're going to go on a psychedelic trip. You're going to go on a journey. And what you gather, what you get from that journey, that's how you're going to understand and have your personal relationship with God. So that opens the door, though, that then there are going to be more than one God necessarily, right? If everybody has their own personalized experience. So there's a lot of paradoxes there, right? Like these are big questions. People are like, yeah, some people might agree with some of that. And at a certain level, okay, it makes sense. Like everybody should have their own personal journey, right? And people come to spirituality or they come to God for different reasons. That's normal. But that's why it's the more sophisticated predictive programming stuff is like, it works because there's some truth to it. But then it's like, where are they going to take you with it, right? Where's Huxley trying to take you? You got to think about the bigger picture, right? He's got these free love, open communities, and they don't really believe the principles that have made Western civilization possible, modern Western civilization, such that we're not, people are not just all living in some kind of like hyper superstitious world, even though they're trying to bring that back, and like with no science, right? You had to break the mystery cult tradition if you were going to develop modern science. You had to have some idea of the universe based on reason, and reason is something universal, right? Like that's why they say man is made in the image of God. Man has a capacity for reason. The spiritual man is not just the natural man that just operates on his immediate instincts and, you know, does whatever he wants. And the only thing keeping him in place is reward and punishment, right? Like you're not going to steal your neighbor's wife just because, you know, he might come and kill you. Like there has to be a higher spiritual level for why you do good or why you do the things that you do. And that higher spiritual,
It's breaking up a
you can
little
do
bit.
things that are not in line with the universe, right? And when a civilization,
The audio is breaking up just a little bit. Well, actually, a lot of bit. Can you hear me okay?
yeah.
So, yeah, we were talking about just because.
But yeah, so that's pretty much it. So they got to get rid of that.
Well, AI is the new drug, right? Reading these articles and the addiction of people with their phones, and I could say this for myself, how I could just look at myself and be how addicted I am to the cell phone. The cell phone is the new drug. I said AI is the new drug. That's pretty much the same thing, though. But the cell phone is the new drug, and it's changing everybody's, like, who programmed it was like asexual people. They programmed the phone. It's modeled off of gambling, so it's modeled off of freaking addiction. It's so like being so addicted to it, and a different, probably creating different neural pathways and all that. So like the new cultural revolution, right? Sure, they're throwing out all this stuff that we see, but the real like narcotic would be the cell phone in a lot of ways. Not saying that not to use a cell phone, but it's obvious that the new doors of perception is the cell phone. You think what's your thoughts on that? Like tying in the cell phone, social media, the click dopamine, all that. How that's like such a powerful drug that most people don't know is a drug, and everyone's talking about fatigue. This is playing a big role in that with as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, same idea of creating, whether it's through psychedelics or it's through information feedback loops, right, and algorithms, they're creating alternate realities, right? And the idea is to sort of imprison people in their own alternate realities, right? In their own little algorithm ghetto. And so it's still just feedback loops and images, and it's more customized, right? You get to customize your own prison cell pretty much because the algorithm's feeding you what you want. And that's the problem, because like, what if, some of the things that you believe or adhere to are wrong? You're just being fed a steady stream of that same stuff. So we have this hyper polarized society where, the left thinks that like Hitler is about to like break down their door any minute. They're kind of like in a permanent trauma state. That also comes from MK Ultra.
Really?
By the way, right? So just that's where that comes from. Those, and I say it's kind of very much like a psychedelic break where people have just totally lost contact with reality. And the right as well, there's a lot of talk about like the woke right, and they have this victim thing too, where they're like, oh, like our traditional, Christianity stuff's being persecuted and da-da-da. And sure, at a certain level, but at the same time, they don't know what the game is, right? Which is that once you think you're a victim, victims can do no harm. That's the Nazis believed they were victims. Germany was a victim of the Treaty of Versailles. A lot of bad things were done to the Germans. Their whole society was destroyed deliberately by the House of Windsor and the banking families that really wanted to prevent Germany from becoming the main European power. It was allied with America and with a lot of the Republican forces. So they destroy Germany, and you create this victim state, and these became the Nazis. So yeah, victims can do no harm, and you just, people are polarized left and right. They're in their silos. One's being fed, you got like 16-year-old Zoomer gamers who are celibate, who want to bring back the Templars because they think that's really trad, and like Latin Mass. Right. And they think if everybody just like recites Latin Mass and rides a horse, and like fights for God, things are gonna be okay. Like who are you gonna go fight? Like there's the enemy's within, right? The enemy is the culture, and is they're not also not. It's this occult banking syndicate. These like 20-year-old gamer Zoomers, they have no idea how an economy should like properly run, or like what do we need to do to stop an economic collapse, right? They think you need Latin Mass and go fight the Saracens. So and then the other side is they're just in open relationships and playing the bongos and dropping microdosing and thinking they're living their best life and getting like fake babies 20 years later because they're barren and they never invested in like meaningful relationships, or they spend $25,000 on a degree in like sociology, and they have literally no marketable skills. So they're radical too. These will become the terrorists, right? You studied sociology and you can't even get a job at Walmart, so you're gonna like bomb a train track or something because you think industrialism is a demon that has enslaved modern man, something like that.
I'm absolutely wild, and I appreciate you coming up on here, David. You're the best, and shout out to Matt, Cynthia, Courtney, the Holmes, and all of them. Just great. Everybody, make sure to smash that like button. Smash it. Smash, smash, smash. And go check out David's links down below. We got to see that. I can't wait to watch the documentary.
It's hot here, and the systems are getting fried.
It's Mercury retrograde. Mercury's in the Gatorade, and so like it's all messed up. But I appreciate you coming on here. You are part of my Wicked Smart journey, getting wicked smart. Any closing statements?
I mean, I think we're. I'd say anybody who's interested, check us out at Age of Muses. The documentary's coming out. It's gonna be intense. It's gonna be dope. It's we're gonna be throwing out a lot of stuff. So people should come with an open mind. And there are conspiracy theorists, and then there are people like me who like to go even further off the beaten path, if you will. So I plan to bring in some of that into the documentary. And we have a journal, right? People who like literature, culture. We're dedicated to, as I said at the beginning, the oligarchy understands the role of culture. And if culture is confined to the lower spheres and people are just emoting at the lowest levels with all these gamed cybernetic feedback loops, then you can't build a lasting culture that has more meaningful or timeless values. So we're dedicated to creating that kind of culture, exploring what that looks like, So yeah, people can check us out as Age of Muses and our poetry magazine, The Chain Muse, and that's where you'll find our print journal. All the
And
stuff that's coming.
I got all them links down below. Thank you for tuning in. It's DOENUT. Much love and God bless you.